guys, welcome to Grounded, a podcast by Inspiring Time. And on this great new year, right? It is a great new year. It's a new beginning. I hope that the women that I bring in front of you are women that inspire you to live your fullest, your brightest, your most vibrant life. And I cannot think of anyone greater than Jenna Lank to start off this new year. She is to the core a badass. So sorry, bleep that out if you're letting the kids listen in, but she is truly a hardworking, dedicated mom, and I cannot wait for her to share her story with you. It brings me great joy to introduce Jenna, and I know what she has to say can touch everybody's life. So we met, I don't even know how many years ago, but we met through a direct sales company that we're both still currently in. And I would say, for me personally, direct sales kind of kicked off a whole new journey in my life that I had no idea that I wanted or needed. And I found so many of the same women and personalities, though very different. We're all in it to find beauty and connection and networks and be our best self. So Jenna, I would love for you to introduce yourself, share some background, and then we're going to kind of dive into what we're here to discuss today.
Okay, so yes, my name's Jenna, and I'm a mom to two girls. They are 7 and 11. Like Amber said, I am still part of the direct sales business. I am also teaching English online to children that live in China. I do that part-time, and I am working on a certification in grief counseling. So I've got a couple things going on. I live in Florida, moved here a couple years ago. My husband and I decided we needed to live near the ocean because that was just what spoke to us. We spent a lot of years up north and decided we were done with winter and it was time. So we moved down to Florida, and I guess my new kind of journey in life started a year and a half ago when he very unexpectedly passed away. And so there's a new chapter to my life that's happening now as a young widow, which is where that grief counseling is kind of coming into play for me. So, yeah.
And let me tell you, I have watched your incredible journey. You are strong, you are driven, and you are raising those girls to be beautiful, to be kind, warm-hearted, and strong. So
yeah, people say about how strong you are all the time. People say that to me, and I am strong, and I do believe that I am strong. What you see on the outside is often not how the grieving person is feeling on the inside. And most days you don't feel nearly as strong as how you might look on the outside because you washed your hair and put on real clothes that day. So it really is a day-to-day process. Every single day is a little bit different in that game.
So what would you say? So I say to you, I feel like you are strong, and it's not because you're like standing warrior pose ready to fight. Though I know every day you walk out the door, you feel like you are literally in go mode. Like you're living this life that may or may not be completely true to the way you're feeling. So I think my first question might be, you're right there in the middle of it. How would you maybe tell people that are trying to help others going through this grieving process, how would you tell them that the respect, how do you respect that person? What are things that you have found in your journey that would be very helpful for somebody else to know?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. We don't really talk a lot about death and grief in this society. It's something that is just hard to deal with and hard to talk about. So when something like this happens, that's very unexpected, the responses you get are very different depending on people's experience with death. Some people have had, grandparents and parents, maybe brothers or sisters that were young that died. Nobody that I knew of until I started going to a support group. I didn't know anybody in my friend group, and especially in my age, that had experienced the death of a loved one, a spouse or a partner. I was 39 when Greg died. I never in a million years imagined that this would happen, and that I would be a single mom with 2 kids. They were 5 and 9 when he died a year and a half ago. So I think the thing that I have felt is so helpful is that it's okay for me to talk about him and to say his name. And it's okay for other people to talk about him if they have a memory, or, we happen to be doing something that we would have all normally done. It's okay to bring him up and not be fearful that I'm going to fall apart instantly. I think people are so afraid of hurting you and making you sad that they don't talk about it at all. But then it's kind of like the elephant that's in the room, because you know that it happened. And I personally would rather you acknowledge it. And if you have something, you want to say about him, that's okay. We can talk about him without it making everybody feel weird and uncomfortable. And if it's on a day that I can't handle it, it's a big feeling day for that day, whatever reason, then I can say that, can't do it today. But I think that's something that's important, is to know that it's okay to recognize that somebody died and that you can talk about them. We don't have to act like it didn't happen and life just moves on, because it did. And that's okay.
And I know with the girls that, we were talking a little bit before I hit record here, and, death happens at all different times of life, all different stages. And you have no idea when it's going to, okay, there are, diseases and things like that you do know the end might be coming. But when it just happens, there's a whole nother layer. You weren't ready. Not that you're ever ready, but now you have 2 beautiful little girls, and they're very in tune with having their dad and their mom as a unit and as a whole. So if there were parents out there with younger children, would there be advice? What are the first things that you might want to plug them into that maybe helped your girls?
Yeah, obviously this was, completely unexpected. So not only in my scenario were we grieving, there was trauma on top of that. So there was the sadness, but then there was, PTSD and anxiety that happened at the same time. So immediately I got them into therapy. Their school was actually a huge help with that. Their school counselors got them set up with immediate trauma services that came to our home for the first 3 months. They came once a week and met with the girls. And then they helped us get set up with some long-term therapy services for them. And then we also found a group locally that was through our hospice here. You don't have to be involved with the hospice to use their services, which is pretty amazing. And our hospice here is great. I had used them for my mom a year before my husband died. And so we found a group that was specific for young families that had lost somebody. So we started doing sessions with them where we would do like a community, now this was pre-COVID when we could get together, but a community dinner together. And then we would all break up into littles, middles, older kids, and then caregivers. And we would kind of all talk about the same topic. So maybe that week was about coping skills. And then they would talk about it, developmentally appropriate for that age group. And I think it's really important for kids to be with other kids that are experiencing the same thing, because likely in their peer groups, they're not going to have somebody that's experiencing something like this, because it's just not that typical with a young family to have a loss of a parent, especially so unexpectedly, because there wasn't an illness involved. So yeah, I think hooking them up with services and with supports right away is super important, especially because if you're in shock and you're grieving and going through all these legal things that are happening and just so many changes at one time, you need some other supports in place for them, because you're not going to be at your best right away.
Well, that's, we didn't actually talk about the legal side of things. Mm-hmm. I know that Christopher and I, being military, we have the JAG officers, and we kind of have a very basic will and what we think might happen. I want to get back to the girls here in just a minute, but they're again, a young married couple, late 30s or so. What would you say, go out right now and make sure that you have taken care of?
Yeah, we had nothing in place. We had talked about having things in place ever since we had the girls, and we just, it was on my to-do list that just never kind of got done. And when we moved down here, it was, I had set up estate planning with my mom because she did have cancer. So we knew, there was going to be an end to that at some point. So I even had an estate attorney in my phone. We just never got there for ourselves. So I would absolutely recommend, getting a will in place, especially if you have children, so that you have those custody arrangements set up in case, because now there's just me. And so I have my own estate plan now, because there needs to be a backup, because I'm it, where before at least the girls still had me. Get a life insurance policy. We did not have any life insurance policy. And I can tell you that to have that would have been huge to help me out. So invest in a life insurance policy and get your will done. Something else that's easy to do, luckily we had that, but everything was joint in our name. So I was able to access everything, but had things like car titles or your lease or your mortgage, any of that that's in just one of your names, I would get into both of your names, because that way you don't have to go through a probate and wait for everything to be transferred to you. And it saves you a lot of time and a lot of money, because everything was jointly in our names. So it was both mine and his. And so it was just so much easier to submit a death certificate and have it just switch to me than to have a lawyer go through all of that.
And I know actually my husband does a lot of stock market stuff. And though our names are jointly on those accounts, I jokingly say to him, if something were to happen, I would have no idea how to close this out, when to get out of that play or, deal, whatever. I wouldn't know. So sometimes having those hard conversations right now, when we moved actually to Biloxi, Christopher was a hurricane hunter. And I remember his very first hurricane, on his first deployment, I didn't cry this much, but all I could see was like the Wizard of Oz and this swirl, and the wings being ripped off this plane, and I'm stuck with kids and dogs, and like, I had that moment of, holy cow, where's the passwords to everything? I mean, at that moment, we went through everything, and I thought, why did it take me this long to make sure I knew where the passwords to the bank accounts were? Not that I needed them necessarily, but he has them written down everywhere. I'm the creative. He's the money man. Okay. So I would say that's definitely a conversation that needs to happen.
Yeah,
for sure.
For sure. Yeah.
Let's see. The unexpected happened. You're in a panic. I am sure you're exhausted mentally, physically, emotionally. The girls are looking to you. You've got them in therapy. You're figuring out the legality of things. What did you do? How did you find Jenna in all of this? Like, what did you lean back on?
Honestly, for this first 6 months, I was really just kind of in shock and going through the motions of life and making sure that, kids got to school and lunches were packed and there was food in the house and bills were paid. It really, he would travel for work sometimes. And so it really felt like he was just on a work trip for the longest time. He would walk back through that door. And so it was so surreal to think that he was not going to walk back through the door. So I would say for the first 6 months, I was really just in shock. It didn't feel like life. Then when the shock started to wear off and I realized that, this was our new reality, the three of us, and he was not coming back. Then the emotional stuff really kicked in, and I was just so sad and so angry that this could happen to our family. And it didn't and still doesn't feel fair that it would happen. And I don't think that I will ever feel at peace completely with it or at peace at all with it, because it doesn't make any sense. The problem with Greg's death is that there isn't a clear, concrete answer that they can give you, because unfortunately, after somebody has died, it's really hard to run the amount of medical testing that they would run if somebody was still alive to diagnose a health condition. So they can only kind of give you some general ideas of what happened. So that makes it hard to not move on. You don't ever necessarily move on. I think when you have something like this, you're going to grieve the rest of your life. And there will be times that, you don't think about it too much and you can be super joyful. And there will be times that it will be like a gut punch and it hits you. I think that with therapy and with an amazing support group of friends that I have, like you were saying, our direct sales tribe, I think is the first tribe of women that I really felt so connected with and supported by, even though we were in all different places of the country and really never saw each other, in person. I used that and was able to find a tribe of people here that have been an incredible support system. And so, I've just worked really hard and will continue to work really hard at feeling my feelings when I need to feel them, and that's okay. And I'm currently working on not feeling guilty if I'm feeling happy or hopeful about something, because it's okay to feel that way. And I know he would want me to feel that way, that I don't have to be sad every day, all day long. He wouldn't want that. And so I think it's just a process. You know, this grief journey is a process, and it's different for everybody. Grief looks very different for everybody. Some people can, you know, try to soften it a little bit quicker than others. And I think that's where I'm at. I'm taking my experience and using that with the grief counseling to, you know, hopefully I'll be able to help other people that are put in this position, because it's not something that we talk about, and there's not a lot of information out there for us, especially for kids that are grieving. There's not much there.
To speak to the point that sometimes you don't feel like you should be happy, I think that is absolutely compounded by the fact that we're female, and that a lot of times there are a lot of emotions that go with that have been maybe not ingrained by your family per se, but by society, you know, like so I think that on top of the grieving process is something you need to be aware of, right? Like you need to know that you're kind of programmed to do that. And
yeah, it's interesting. In my grief support group, it is mostly women in there. I think that women are more likely to reach out and ask for help for themselves and for their kids than widowers are. There's not nearly as many men in my support group as women. And the men that are in the group, it's interesting, they seem to kind of move on a lot more quickly and find a new significant other to put into that role of their either wife or just, you know, girlfriend or partner, so much more quickly than the women do. The women are in there. Some of them, you know, it's been years, 4 or 5, 6 years since they lost their husband, and they are still not in that place where they're ready to kind of share their heart with somebody, because they are trying to just not be a martyr. But I think, you know, we feel like we need to just do the hard stuff all the time and deal with it. And, you know, it's okay if we're not feeling the joy, because as long as the kids and everything else is taken care of, you know, we'll just keep trudging along.
That's kind of the ugly truth of that. But some of my favorite posts of yours are the ones of sunset. You always find that moment that I feel like speaks to you and Greg, though I'd never personally met him. That moment seems to bring you such joy, and it's really wonderful watching like that come across, to know that, you know, you might have had a really crappy day, but then you found the beauty. You know he's there, and I know that will be a guiding light. You know, it will keep on. So
yeah, sunsets were Greg's favorite time at the beach. We would try to go almost every Friday night. If it was nice, we would try to go at the end of the day and do like sunset at the beach. So yes, when we do go, or if there happens to be a pretty one here, I couldn't go to the beach for a while. That was our special place before kids, even different beaches. And we met on a beach, and he proposed on a beach, and all of our vacations pre-kids were to different tropical islands. So I couldn't go for a while. It hurt. But now when we go, I feel like it's the only place that I can feel him. It's hard to explain really, but just, I can kind of just, he's there somehow. So yeah, the sunsets and even just being at the beach anytime is
and so it seems that spot has gotten easier. It's become actually a relief maybe to go and quietly talk to him in your own way, probably. So is that something that would be another thought for somebody going through this process is maybe look to that spot. Find that spot to where you can go communicate.
I mean, I think there's two things. You have to find your way to feel some kind of peace. For me, I can be there and I can feel peaceful and feel like he's there, whether I talk to him in my head or I talk to him out loud, because I've done both. So I think that's a place. I also think it's just really important to find somewhere that you can go where you can tune out all of the constant noise that's in your head. They say that for kids and for adults too, but after you experience something like this, there's this constant kind of background noise, and it's really hard for kids in school with reading comprehension in particular, because even though they're reading something, they're not 100% focused on what they're reading or what they're doing, because there is just this constant thing happening. I've noticed that with both of my kids, that their grades have gone down in their English, especially the reading comprehension part since this has happened. I couldn't read a book for the longest time because I couldn't remember what I had just read the last time I read it. So I have found a place where I can go. For me, dancing has been a part of my soul since I was little. I always danced. I went to college and got a degree in dance. I taught dance.
She's incredible. Like, if you want to see incredible dance, it's her right there. That's the embodiment of it.
So it is my happy place. And so I love that I have a place that I can go, and for 55 minutes, the music is loud and the lights are on, and I can tune out everything else that's happening. There's days that I walk in there and I just cried in the car on the way there. I did that the other day. But then I get that release. And for that time, it is just Jenna. It's not the mom or, the grieving widow or the, person that needs to go do all these different tasks. And I have to go to the grocery store because I'm the responsible adult. It's just me and the music. So I think it's really important if you can find a place that is your happy place, that you keep going there and keep some kind of normalcy and routine happening. And it forces you to get out of bed and brush your teeth in the morning and have a purpose. You have somewhere that you have to go. Yeah.
I've been reading the Jay Shetty, How to Be Like a Monk, I think is the name of. Anyway, he talks about routine and the actual, all the brain stuff that goes along with the routine. And the routine really provides that safe hallway that you're walking down. And though you can get into routines and then, not ever deviate from it, but the routine actually gives you a place to become more creative. It's safe. You know what's going to happen next. You've, given it enough thought to where, okay, we can navigate through this. And once you get to the end of that hallway, maybe you add something. So yeah, routine.
I like that. Yeah, especially with kids. That is something that the therapist told me from the very beginning. If you have kids that are experiencing some kind of trauma or grief, they said you have to maintain as much normalcy as you can, because the world that they knew has just, completely exploded, and they are experiencing something that they never even thought was possible to experience. And that naive, beautiful little kid bubble that they were in is gone, and they'll never get it back. And so, going to school and going to, soccer practice or dance practice and homework and, bedtime routines, to keep all of that as normal as possible so that they can feel some kind of grounding still there. was what they said from the very beginning. And so we did. I mean, I remember that the day after he died was trash day, and I rolled the trash cans out. And my neighbors were out there, and people wanted to come up and talk to me, and I was still in shock and didn't even believe that it had happened. But someone, was like, I could have come and gotten your trash for you. And I was like, oh, it's okay. The trash needed to come out. So yeah, to maintain as much schedule and normalcy, I think makes it feel like you can at least count on something, because the biggest thing you thought you could count on is now gone. Your family unit as you knew it is now gone.
And for those of us maybe who haven't suffered this close of a loss, like number one, I cannot imagine actually. But, if you were putting this into other practices in your life, knowing that a routine were helpful, in my case, routine is, again, there's no comparison here, none. But if Christopher were to deploy, which he will this summer, he is gone.
Right.
I then become the sole provider that the kids know right here. And that is one of the first things that they'll tell families that parents are, coming and going a lot, is stick to your schedule. Make sure that you're not sitting around in a little huddle. Whereas talking is important, communication is important, but it's not, don't dwell on that. Make it a routine, stick with it, talk, open communication as much as possible. And
yeah. I mean, there's people that experience, grief in all kinds of ways, and it doesn't necessarily have to be that somebody died to experience grief. I think a lot of people are grieving now and last year in 2020, just the loss of their normal routines. Their lives as they knew it were different as they went into quarantine, or maybe their job changed, or they had to move, or kids that maybe are going into foster care. There's lots of ways that things change that you can grieve the loss of something. It doesn't have to be as severe as ours. Ours, was one of the worst possible ways to have to grieve. But, there's lots of people that are grieving, and you can't say that, that my grief is worse than somebody else, to discount somebody else's feelings. I think there's ways that everybody can still use these practices, with talking to somebody or seeking out, your happy place and sticking to routines. I think those are all ways that people can find help regardless of what the grief is coming from. Yeah.
And I think 2020 was a good, more of a shot of reality maybe, where it's important to know yourself. And I feel like a lot of us have probably got a little out of tune with what we needed as a human being, just as single human, just what do I need? And that really hit home with a lot of people in 2020, that they had to kind of unearth what used to be so important. And so it's definitely been,
yeah. And people got, I think we've gotten spoiled, so many of us. And there were people that were so upset. I remember just within the first 3 months, we're talking about how, they hadn't been able to get their nails done or their hair done, things like that, which we so take for granted. And so I think you're right. 2020 made us kind of do a little bit of a reality check and maybe say, okay, do we really have to have all these things to keep us happy, or what, where are our morals a little bit more centered? What can we do here to keep us happy, but live a simpler life? And that's okay.
And I think pushing off into 2021, if there is something that I would like to put out into the world, it's that find the beauty.
Right.
Search for that. Be very aware of that and work towards making that part of your daily routine. It's simple. It doesn't sound like a lot, but there's a lot of research that goes along with the positivity and being clear on what you're looking for. So pushing forward, May 2021. Be a bright spot. And may we find the positive, meaningful relationships. Like I know Jenna and I have not kept up. She's been a little busy and living life just like I have. And you know what? It is never too late to reconnect, make new connections, network. You never know when you're going to need a group or a tribe to surround you.
Mm-hmm. So that's something that I've learned through this grief process too, that other people might experience, and it's normal. There are people that have been your dear close friends for a long time, but when something like this happens, you change a little bit. There's a part of you that's different. I will never be exactly the way I was a year and a half ago. And there are some people that can't hang with that. And they are not able to kind of quote one of our mutual friends, they're not able to kind of stick it out through that season of life with you. And then there are other people that, we're maybe just acquaintances with that come up out of nowhere, that become some of your strongest supporters and champions. And so my friend and tribe kind of network has really changed. And some of the people that I would consider would have been lifelong friends, we don't really keep in touch anymore. They just didn't know how to talk to me about Greg dying. And then there's other people that are now my dearest friends that I didn't even know that well before. And they've been just the people that take my kids if I am having a minute, or the people that would come over and say, okay, you need to go get some coffee and get out of the house today. They just, the people that brought groceries when I couldn't do it. So it's okay if your tribe changes, but yes, find some people to be part of your tribe. We all need a support system, even just for day-to-day life, regardless of trauma happening. Life's hard. Find some people. Yes.
Find some connections. Make a connection. Maybe that's our challenge as we leave here today. Maybe the challenge is go find a new connection. Really branch out. Life is constantly throwing curveballs, and be aware. Mm-hmm. So thank you so much. It's been very meaningful. I feel like this is a very hard conversation to have, and maybe this gave some hope and some real insight to somebody that's just starting on this grief journey. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for wanting to put some of this out there, because it is tough stuff to talk about. And I like knowing that I can be part of the conversation to make it less scary for people to talk about this tough stuff. So, thanks.
And we need to do virtual coffee soon. Let's do that. Let's do that. All right, girl. We will be talking to you soon. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.